Hey, what is immortals? It is TCCrew here with a new video for you. Welcome to part 6 of What If Deku Was a Viltrumite. I just want to greet you guys by just saying, sit back and relax. You're in for a treat, so we begin. Class 1A were frozen with shock, both unable and unsure of how to process what they had just heard. Some of them went as far as to believe that there was something wrong with their hearing because there was no way that they just heard this right. They all stared wide-eyed at Izuku, unsure what to say, until the silence was broken by Ida.
How many man is your father?
The blue-haired boy shouted, almost refusing to believe that it was true. Izuku didn't give a verbal response to this. He just looked away in embarrassment, but everyone else took it as a yes.
Actually, that explains a lot.
Uraka then commented, sounding as if she had a sudden realization. Everyone else caught on to this soon afterwards, realizing that it did make sense. All Might and Izuku had almost the same quirk, which would make sense if they were father and son. Izuku had almost claimed that his father's profession wasn't that of a hero, which also made sense since Omni-Man doesn't have a license. Another thing that both Uraraka and Ida realized was that the reason why Izuku had been sleep deprived the other day. The green-haired boy had claimed that he was helping his father with work, but it could have just been a lie to hide the fact that they were training.
Well, now the cat's out of the bag. I heard you fought some strong villains. So how did it go?
The joyous and proud voice of Omni-Man then asked. Everyone jumped a little from this sudden speech, as they realized that the unlicensed hero was talking to his son. Izuku looked a little conflicted upon hearing this, as he answered by saying,
I defeated a really strong villain, but I had help.
while looking towards Uraraka, Nolan noticed this, thinking that the brown-haired girl must have saved Izuku's life, before giggling and saying,
That's fine. Soon enough you'll be so strong that you won't need any help.
with a joyous tone.
That is great to hear, but isn't he strong enough already?
The proud and booming voice of All Might then asked, and no one could tell if he was serious or joking. Omni-Man just laughed upon hearing this, as he,
Oh please, you can never be too strong. You better watch your back. He'll surpass you pretty soon.
with a tone that was clearly joking, Izuku giggling awkwardly after hearing all of this, before he said,
I think you're exaggerating, but thanks.
with a voice that showed how awkward he was. Both All Might and Omni-Man laughed upon hearing his voice, both thinking that he sounded ridiculous. Class 1A was once again stunned. Finding out that their classmate was related to Omni-Man was shocking enough, but watching the unlicensed hero have such a friendly chat with All Might was even more stunning. What made it even worse was that they were talking about it. They were casually talking and joking about how Izuku would possibly grow stronger than all of them, and they were almost implying that it could happen at any given moment. They all had their first dose of Izuku's true strength when they saw him fight Inomu, so it wasn't out of this world to think that he would be stronger than All Might one day. Some of them couldn't accept the difference in power between themselves and Izuku, but they all decided that this was a good enough reason to train much harder. Everyone then proceeded to ask both Omni-Man and Izuku a bunch of questions, overwhelming them both in the process. There was one student, however, who was completely silent. It was Bakugo, and he seemed to be both angry and in denial. The blonde was angry enough when Izuku and Omni-Man spoke about what happened at the USJ, but only bothered to acknowledge that Uraraka had been helping. He was also fighting there. He was also injured, and he had risked his life just as much as the other two. He played a big part, but it seemed like no one had even noticed. What made things worse was that he finally realized what All Might meant when he said that Izuku had a connection to a strong hero. Bakugo was trained by All Might and had his support, but Izuku was indeed very similar to him. The green-haired boy wasn't just mentored by Omni-Man, he was his son. All this time, he had had this connection to this strong hero, yet he didn't share it. Now there was an explanation why Izuku was so powerful. It only angered Bakugo further. He refused to let Izuku be stronger than him. He was the successor to the number one hero, so he would crush Deku. After the incident, the students got some time off so that the school could conduct a proper investigation. That time was short, however, as the students returned to school after just a few days. Class 1A was once again gathered in the classroom, mingling with each other before the teacher arrived. Izuku was sitting at his desk in silence, looking very tired again. He had recovered from his injuries long ago, but that didn't mean he got to rest. His father was pushing him even more with his training, and it was getting more difficult. Whether they were improving his flight, strength, speed, or durability didn't matter. Izuku would still end up exhausted beyond comprehension. It was so bad that his classmates thought that he hadn't fully recovered from the incident at the USJ. The class kept chatting while sitting at their desks. A few of them wondered who was going to teach them, but that question was quickly answered when the classroom door flung open.
Good morning, class.
A muffled Aizawa then said, as he entered the room. Everyone looked shocked, for they believed that Aizawa would be recovering for much longer.
Sir, are you alright?
Ida then asked, genuinely concerned for the teacher's well-being. Aizawa just sounded as tired as usual as he responded by saying,
I'm fine. Recovery girl just went overboard with her treatment, but my health isn't important, because your battle is far from over.
Everyone froze with tension upon hearing this. The way that Aizawa had spoken these words made it seem like something big was about to happen, and some believed that it would be another villain attack.
The UA Sports Festival is coming up.
The tired teacher then said, finally breaking the tension in the air. The class calmed down upon hearing this and started to get excited, but there were those who questioned if it was a good idea.
Before you ask, we won't be canceling the sports festival. It's our way of showing that a villain attack won't affect us. But it is also far too important to be cancelled. Whereas heroes and agency will be watching your performances. So it's your opportunity to prove yourselves.
Aizawa then said, answering the question before it was asked. The class started getting even more excited now, both cheering and bellowing at the opportunity to prove their strength. Aizawa looked as unamused as always as he silenced the class before saying,
You have 1 week to prepare yourselves, so don't slack off on your training.
with his usual tired voice. The class nodded in confirmation to this as Aizawa's gaze slowly made his way over to Izuku.
Midoriya, try to go easy on your classmates.
The tired teacher then said, quite bluntly. Everyone was shocked to hear this, but they really shouldn't have been. Aizawa was recognizing that Izuku was far stronger than his classmates. It was as simple as that. Normally, this would anger the students, but they knew better. There was no denying that Izuku was powerful, so it was reassuring to see their teacher trying to make sure that they wouldn't get hurt. The green-haired boy thought for a second until he scratched the back of his head and responded by saying,
I'll try, but I can't promise anything.
with a calm voice. This response scared everyone a little. They knew that he wouldn't go out of his way to hurt them, but now they were painfully reminded of the fact that it could still happen by accident. Aizawa looked unaffected by this as he sighed before saying,
Fair enough. Class dismissed.
before leaving the classroom. Following the teacher's exit, the students began cheering and talking about the festival. They kept rambling about how they were going to do their best and how lots of heroes would be watching. They were all interrupted, however, by someone who was yawning loudly. Everyone turned to see that it was Izuku, but they couldn't tell if his yawn was out of boredom or exhaustion. The green-haired boy then turned his expression towards his classmates, looking quite confused, as he asked.
What?
Almost everyone looked conflicted upon hearing this. There was something that they wanted, maybe needed to say, but they didn't know how to say it. They didn't know if they were brave enough to say it either. Izuku continued to look at them in confusion until the silence was finally spoken by Ida. The blue-haired boy stood up and looked Izuku in the eye as he said,
Midoriya, I think that I can speak for our entire class when I say this. You are strong, and I seriously doubt that any of us will be able to stand up to you. But we won't just give up. We may not be able to beat you, but we're at least going to try.
with a serious tone. Izuku looked shocked upon hearing this as he looked at the rest of the class. That is when he realized that Ida had indeed spoken for everyone. The green-haired boy suddenly let out a sigh of relief before he proceeded to laugh a little. Everyone looked confused, for they had expected a much different reaction.
Sorry. I just didn't expect this. I thought
you were going to talk about something urgent and serious.
He then said, still laughing a little as he did. Everyone was even more confused now. Ida had sounded pretty serious when he spoke, so what did Izuku mean by what he said? The green-haired boy looked amused upon witnessing everyone's reaction, as he then proceeded to say,
I already expected this from you all. I would honestly be disappointed if you didn't give it everything you've got.
with a quite joyous tone. Everyone's shock disappeared upon hearing this, for they realized what it meant. Izuku knew that they couldn't defeat him, but he still wanted them to try. He wanted them to get stronger and catch up to him. He was actually rooting for them. The class then smiled at Izuku, who then smiled back at them. The room was then silent for a while, but it was suddenly broken by Uraraka, who shouted,
Deku! I'm going to do my best. Just you wait and see.
with a voice that sounded like a weird mixture between excitement and curiosity, which was also shown on her expression. Izuku was shocked by this sudden change in personality as he said,
Okay. I know I just told you to give it your all, but now you're scaring me.
with a confused voice. Everyone laughed loudly upon hearing this, all gladly looking forward to the festival. It might not be easy, but they were all determined. They were going to give it their all. After the day was over, everyone went home to immediately start training. Izuku already had training with his father in the schedule, so they immediately took to the skies.
Alright, we'll work on your speed today. Let's see how long it takes for you to catch up to me.
Nolan then said as they got high enough. Izuku looked at his father with a weird expression as he asked.
How about that? Could we focus more on combat?
Nolan looked both confused and intrigued upon hearing this, as he responded by saying,
Not saying that I'm against it, but for what reason do you need to train in combat?
with a curious voice. Izuku smiled awkwardly as he answered by saying,
The UA Sports Festival is coming up, and I wanted to prepare until then.
with an equally awkward tone. Nolan just laughed upon hearing this, as then said,
Oh, so that's the reason. It won't be necessary, since you won't be participating.
with his usual voice. Izuku smiled at first, but it was quickly replaced by confusion when he heard what his father said.
What?
He asked, sounding genuinely confused. Nolan's expression suddenly turned serious. He looked at his son and said,
Izuku, there's no point in participating. You're way stronger than everyone else, so you'd be better off training with me instead.
with a calm and serious tone. Izuku was getting more and more confused by the second, as he responded by saying,
But the festival is important. A bunch of heroes and agencies will be watching. It's our chance to prove ourselves.
almost sounding like he was pleading. Nolan was unchanged by this, as he sighed before proceeding to explain.
Actually, it doesn't really matter at all. The festival only exists to give you fame and recognition, both of which you can live without. As for proving your strength, you don't have to prove yourself to anyone. You're a Viltrumite. So the idea of you having to prove yourself to a bunch of humans, it just is insulting as it's laughable. It's as if a human had to prove his strength to a bunch of ants.
Izuku was discouraged upon hearing this, for it didn't seem like his father was going to change his mind. What he said was true enough ways, so he knew that he couldn't convince his father. The green-haired boy began to sulk. He was looking forward to the festival, but it seemed that he wouldn't get to play a part in it. Nolan noticed this sadness within Izuku, and it made him conflicted. On one end, he could be more productive, but on the other, it seemed that this mattered a lot to Izuku. Nolan sighed heavily, as he went against his own reasoning by saying,
Alright, fine, you can participate in the festival. So stop looking down already.
with a conflicted voice. Izuku looked confused at first, but then perked up and asked,
Really?
with excitement in his voice. Nolan forced a smile as he responded while saying,
Yes, now let's go back to training before I change my mind.
before taking off at high speed. Izuku didn't have enough time to react as he followed his father. At first, he was afraid that he wouldn't get to participate in the festival, but all of this was gone now. There was something in his mind that stopped him from getting as excited as he usually would, however. It was what his father had said. He couldn't stop thinking about what Nolan had said about him. How everyone else is an ant when compared to him. The more he thought about it, the worse it got. Because he was starting to realize how true it was. It even led him to wonder if there even was a point. The green-haired boy tried to shake these thoughts out of his head as he raced against his father. Thank you all for sticking around, and I hope that you enjoyed. Before you leave, we would just like to let you know that We the Celestials has many other channels for your entertainment and viewing purposes. All the information you'll need is right below in the description, so feel free to check out all the other incredible projects our team creates. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details will be in the description below. That's all for today's video, so goodbye and have a divine day.